there. Wait for a couple more people to join us. Welcome. Well, hello, my name is Harry Urschel. Welcome to our Minnesota Crossroads Career Network webinar tonight. We're really glad you joined us. I'm looking forward to what we have available for you tonight. And I know that you're going to get some good encouragement and ideas and things that you can apply for your job search. And we hope it's an encouraging and uplifting time for you too. You probably have experienced this job search process can be a roller coaster. And so we hope to even that out a little bit and give you some hope through all this. Again, my name's Harry Urschel. I'm glad you're here. And we're going to have a couple of people speaking tonight. We've got Chris Morrison is going to talk about his transition. We've got Tom Jacobson is going to talk about and what you signed up for, talk about kickstarting your job search, getting things kind of ramped up a little bit faster. And Tom and I are actually switching roles today. Is that normally he leads our and MCs our discussion for Thursday evenings when we do it on the second Thursday of each month. But since he's doing the main presentation today, I'm subbing. So not going to be as good, but glad that we can do all this for you. Part of our hope with Crossroads is that along with helping people succeed in their job search, we also talk about bigger issues and point people to the hope and encouragement of Jesus Christ. It should be no surprise that the Bible has a great deal of wisdom for life. And, you know, one thing I see very often is that people try to get through life on their own, especially when they may be going through a difficult time like a job search. Life wasn't meant to be done without community. We're meant to support each other, to show love to each other, and to encourage each other. And scripture says, do not neglect to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encourage one another. Now, in life, a church home can be a great source of wisdom and support and hope. And in a job search, seeking help from others and building community with groups like this can be a great resource and moral support to find your next position. Don't do it alone. Plugging into groups like Crossroads can really help. And at the end of our main presentation today, I'll tell you about additional ways you can engage, but really encourage you to get plugged in, keep in contact with a number of others, engage with people, form relationships. It makes a huge difference rather than sitting at home and staring into a computer screen all day, just applying for jobs or finding ways to get help online only. Let me open us in a word of prayer and we'll get started here. Lord, we're grateful that we can come together today and be able to at least virtually gain some hope and encouragement through this. We pray that you use this time for your purposes, Lord, that you provide people what they need. You know their needs and their greater need better than they understand. We understand ourselves. Provide hope and courage and boldness and comfort and whatever it is that people have a need for as we go through this tonight. Pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. With that, I am glad to be able to introduce Chris Morrison. Chris has recently gone through his own job search. We talked, he and I, a little bit through this, and he, like many of you, probably most of you, had lost a previous position he had been in for a long period of time and kind of traveled through this journey and landed on the other side. And so he's here to tell a little bit how his journey has gone. And I'm glad to have you join us. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks very much, Harry. I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me a little bit of time. And just offer right from the get-go. Anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn or has questions about my background or the story or whatever you'd like, feel free to reach out. Everybody can use extra connections on LinkedIn anyways. So just want to be glad to offer that. And okay, so just maybe 10 minutes, I'm just going to tell my story about my transition. As Harry mentioned, I did find myself in a situation where I'd been in a company for a long time, 23 years. The shortcut to the kind of the end of the story is, 5 months later, roughly, ended up with a couple of offers to consider, and then I'm now 5 weeks into a new role. And there were a lot of people that I was going through that journey alongside with, and most of them are also found themselves landed in a role that they are enjoying. So just want to provide some encouragement. There is a lot of opportunity out there right now, but aligning it with your values and the right kind of role does take some time. So maybe just to back up a little bit, my background is, among other things, I did spend 20 years as a firefighter in the city of Bloomington. Not as a career activity, since Bloomington was basically volunteer most of that time. But then, that led to my full-time role, which is IT infrastructure person for a large medical device company. And thanks for saying that, Paul. My career, kind of what built up to it, was essentially working in various fields of IT infrastructure, sort of the nuts and bolts of the back end around it, servers and storage and those kinds of things. But eventually, my parent company really started acquiring a lot of other companies. And so I got involved with integrating those companies that we might buy. And eventually that became my full-time role there. Like a lot of IT organizations, there's a lot of outsourcing that happens. There's a lot of things that produce financial strain against an IT organization. But I felt pretty safe because, the reality is the merger and acquisition work is not, you can hire consultants to do it, but it's kind of a unique work. Well, then one day at the end of the day, I got the proverbial, "Hey, Chris, we need to meet about something important." And I know what that means when you have that meeting. So essentially, they decided to reorganize IT pretty dramatically by hundreds of people. And they were going to take the work that we were doing and distribute it out into the business instead of doing it as a centralized function. So that left a role that they didn't need me in. So after 23 years at one place, I was at a few other places before that, IBM and Honeywell and some other big companies. But you start thinking after 23, 25 years that maybe this is the one you're going to run with to the end. And then that didn't happen. And so I kind of had to stop and take a breath. And I will say, at first, it definitely feels, you try to put some blame on other people or yourself or whatever. There's really no sense in that. The situation is just sort of what it is. And of course, I felt a lot of strain. At the time we were a single income family, so just my income. I had 2 children that were starting their freshman year in college, and number of other concerns that created a financial we worried about, and many of us worried just very basically, how are you going to provide, right? And to be honest, it does feel a little bit like you could just, it's fair. It feels a little bit like someone just sort of came and handed you some divorce papers, especially if you weren't expecting it. So there's no kind of getting around feeling rejected, because the reality is that you were. And so I think it's important to get an idea of who you're rejected by. Matters more than the fact that you were rejected, right? It's really just an organization making a financial decision. And one of the stories I like to tell, I guess, is, I'm in the habit of meeting with some good friends on Friday mornings. We kind of do life together. It's a bunch of guys. We also do some Bible study together. And, they reminded me, Jesus was rejected in his own hometown also, right? So even sometimes the people that you think are going to kind of watch out for you, take care of you, may not be that way. It's much better to put your trust in something greater, like a Father God, than it is, certainly the world of corporate America and the people that are making those decisions. But I went through a process of trying to watch the time a little bit closely, Harry. So you just stop me if I'm going too slow or too fast. But I went through a process of taking a few moments to a few weeks really to understand what I wanted to do. Is this a good time to pivot to some other career or to an adjacent career? And to really take some time to think about it. What I would recommend though is more of a parallel approach. Like you take some time to think about that, but at the same time, there are some people who are going to hear about what happened to you, and they'll be talking to somebody else who's talking to somebody else. And pretty soon you might find out there's an excellent opportunity that if you get the timing right, you might be able to pick something up that's right away. So, and sometimes those can be the best options. That was the case for me, not necessarily the best option, but there was a role that I was sort of perfect for in another company. And because I was trying to decide who I wanted to be when I grow up, I sort of just didn't take the time to dig into that. And later on I did, and then they found out, oh, I wish you would come to us 4 weeks earlier, because we just hired somebody different internal to do that. We would have rather had you. So I would just sorry to give too much advice, but I recommend definitely stop and think about, do you want to just jump back into the corporate world, or if it's not a corporate role that you're in, into that same environment, or is this your chance to do something totally different? But I would just say keep, 1 foot on the search button and 1 foot on the vision button at the same time, right? Proverbs says, where there is no vision, the people perish. So you do need to stop and think about, what's my vision? Where do I really want to go with this? And I would say for me, I did actually think about that, because I spent a lot of time in the fire service, and there are, a few fire chief roles that are available. And based on my experience, I probably could apply for. It'd be totally different than the IT work I was doing. I chose not to go back on that path, because that's a very high operations and a 7x24 kind of world. People's challenges don't wait for anything. So, house fires don't wait for anything. So I'd spent a lot of time in an operations role in my job. And so I just didn't want to go back into that. But it's good to consider and to get some good advice on, whether it makes sense to pivot or to stay in the track that you've been in. I do say that one of the other things I did was in sort of deciding what kind of roles that I wanted. There's a lot of stuff in LinkedIn, obviously, and there are a lot of recruiters in LinkedIn, and you do have to sort of be a little bit picky about the recruiters you open yourself up to, because they're just motivated sometimes to fill the role, not to fill the role that's right for you. But I would say, don't make sure you cast a wide enough net that you can, collect the jobs that you have. A few things that I just wrote down here of things, that I took the time to consider what I want in a new role, right? There's probably no perfect role. Like if I had a dream job, this is exactly what the job would be. Those take longer to get, and you might have to have your next job before you get to the ultimate job. But to make that list of pros, and if you can find a role that's got 8 out of the 10 pros, it helps the decision-making go a lot faster. For me, in the end, I ended up with a job that was, I actually ended up with 2 offers at the same time from 2 different companies. And so that did help the negotiation strategy a little bit. And Harry, maybe you can mention it later. I know there's some great videos out there by your group on what negotiation strategies work good once you do get an offer. And so I highly recommend that. But a few things I thought about was, do I want a remote role, or am I okay with some kind of commute or even a move? Do I want to manage people or not? Do I want to be part of a team or do consulting? And so I started to make a list of that things, and then I started sort of looking, talking to people who had roles that met that criteria, and not talking so much to people that had roles that didn't meet those criteria. So that was really a helpful process for me to write it down. The other thing is, the company did provide some transition people or outplacement services. I recommend highly to take advantage of that if you can, because you're going to be able to use resources to not just do resume building and all that stuff, which is super important kind of right away. But this is what they kind of do all day. So they see a lot of people in your exact same situation. And it was really helpful to hear them say, oh, well, this person I just met with did this, and they had these options, and this is the one they went with, or these people had this option, and this is the one they went with. And it sort of gave you some hope, like, oh, okay, I'm not, this isn't gonna tarry on forever. There's all kinds of people around me in the same situation, and they're all landing. So it gives you kind of a spoonful of sugar in that way. So I recommend that. I also recommend to be patient in whatever interviews you get with future companies. That process can be really slow. And the job I have now, they were basically doing one interview a week. And so it took me probably 6 weeks to get through the interview schedules. And then the other thing was, it seemed to me that of all the interviews that I had, and I probably had 15, 20 interviews in this process, that there were just to be natural and to expect a little bit of the unexpected questions. It used to be sort of give me an example of blah, blah, blah. And now they're asking all kinds of interesting questions about, sort of, can they get you to stick there? So they want to know a lot more about your personality and are you easy to work with and all those kinds of things, as much as have you what things can you demonstrate you've done in the past that you could do for them in the future. And I'll just share one quick story on that. One of the questions I got from one of the interviewers was, they just asked me, Chris, what do you dream for? I thought, okay, that's an odd question. What do I dream for? Like, is this a professional question or a personal question? Or and it just came back, just tell me what you dream for. So I told them, on a professional level, I really hope for basically truthful people to work with, right? As much truthful people to work with as I can in a new role. And on a personal level, I take my faith seriously. I do wish, I think God meant this world to be a lot more loving than it is. And, I wish that people had a relationship with Jesus that would make it possible for them to be that loving, as loving as he was. That's all to say is, not to be afraid to be yourself during interviews. And I'm probably just about out of time. Uh-oh, I'm getting the hairy look.
Not at all. No, not at all. Terrific. Go ahead.
So I guess maybe I'll just try to close with this is, my experience during this time while I was sort of fretting about what to do and where things were going to land. It was obvious to me that there was some plan to provide for my family and for us. And that turned out to be very true. While I was searching and considering about what roles to take, you take the higher one or you take the lower one, or maybe this is going to be 3 more months than I thought it was going to be. God came through and he basically offered a part-time job for my wife that sort of made up the difference that she absolutely loves at the exact same time. And then it turns out the company I left made a mistake, well, a communications mistake. They told me the wrong severance amount. So what I actually ended up getting was 3 months more than what they told me I would be getting. So that bridged the gap between a bunch more interviews and being patient enough to sort of have a couple of jobs to choose from. So it's when you think, you got life down, I think, God has his own way of coming through for you.
That's terrific. Thanks, Chris. As your experience illustrates, the job search process never goes the way we think it's going to go or the way we want it to go, right? It always has more bumps in the road, and there's ups and downs, and it's an emotional roller coaster. But if you keep focused on the things that are meaningful to you and real and something solid like faith in Christ, that'll definitely help you get through it. But as you mentioned also, is that the interview process typically goes a lot slower than you expect, and their sense of urgency isn't the same as yours.
That is correct.
When they tell you they want to get hired, when they tell you they want somebody on board as soon as possible, you're thinking, great, next week, and they're thinking within the next couple of months. Yeah,
right. Either in the starting end or their whole hiring process can go awry. I mean, I got through with one company through the second round of interviews, and then they just ghosted me. It just disappeared. They never called me back again. They never nothing. It just disappeared. And turned out that was a sign of someplace you wouldn't have wanted to work. But
exactly. Unfortunately, that does happen too.
Yep.
Well, thanks again, Chris. Really appreciate you sharing, and got a couple of comments in there about just being helpful and inspirational, and I agree. Appreciate it. And we're really glad also to introduce Tom Jacobson. Tom, as I mentioned earlier, actually leads our Crossroads group in Woodbury when we're meeting in person. We're not right now, obviously, we're still online, but Tom has been serving the job search group for many years. I don't even know, it's probably 12 or 14 or more, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it's getting up there.
It's getting up there. I won't say exactly how many years it's been because it ages us, right?
Yes, exactly.
But I really have so come to appreciate him. I consider him a friend. He's got some great insight in this process. He's been through his own job search a couple of times where he's had to apply everything that he encourages other people to consider, and I think has learned a lot and is able to share a lot in the process. I know you'll be helped through this, and so Tom, I'll turn it over to you for the next hour.
Perfect. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen now and hopefully put that on. There we go. Jumpstarting your job search. I encourage you to ask questions if you have questions during the time. Apparently, they're popping out now a little more effectively. So if I see them, I'll try to. And if Harry, if I don't answer one that you think I need to answer, please jump in and let me know what that is. So again, my name is Tom Jacobson, and I'm happy to be here tonight to try to share with you some ways of jumpstarting your job search if you're stuck, or if even if you're just going along. Maybe there's something, that one little tidbit here or there that might mean a big difference in how you're approaching things or you're thinking about things. I thought that Chris did a wonderful job of sharing with you some of the ups and downs that happen in job search, and and I think that some of the things that he had to say, I'll try to reference whenever I think it's appropriate in what I'm talking about, because he did say some things that resonated with me, and I think I talk about a little bit during the presentation tonight. So I think that's great. So let me start by saying jumpstarting your job search is a lot like tuning up your car. And the reason I use that analogy is because, we're all thinking about that a little bit more now with gas prices being what they are. It resonates a little bit better. Job search it can be very trying at times, and as Chris alluded to, and just tuning up the things that you do in job search on a day-to-day basis can really make a big difference. So are your spark plugs really firing on all the way they should be? Is your air filter possibly robbing your better gas mileage? Are your driving habits working for your gas mileage and your efficiency? If you look at that in job search, there could be, are we telling the right stories? Are we, having the right body motions? Are we reflecting a very positive attitude, or are we actually having a Debbie Downer type of reaction, to coin a phrase from Saturday Night Live? Are the habits that we do on a day-to-day basis fueling our ability to be successful? One thing that I hear a lot from people especially during the testimonies, like through their career changes and their transitions that Chris did tonight, is starting your day the right way. And there is an online mentor out there named Darren Hardy that indicated that people who start their day without looking at their email, turning on the television, doing the types of things that turn their attitude a certain direction, can be more effective. And so looking at, what are the things that, like self-help, focused on devotion, spiritual, all those types of things can have a big way of starting your day so that you can be successful. Having the habits of success can really change how your job search may go. And I highly recommend that you look at that from that perspective. Is what does that mean, and how does that affect our overall attitude and how we perform? So that's something that you'll want to think about, creating good habits on a day-to-day basis so that you can be successful. And I really think you'll find that to be helpful. Okay. Buying into transition. What is transition and why am I in it now? That question goes through people's heads all the time. The cause of transition is what we need to move on quickly from. Chris alluded to it when he was talking about it, that it hits you hard. And sometimes you can stay stuck in that attitude of blaming and looking at, why did this happen to me, and why does it have to happen to me? And focus on the troubles it's causing you, and not really taking charge of your job search, or taking charge of your attitude, and really being fortified in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's really critical that we accept the reasons for transition, whatever they may be, and move on from them as quickly as possible. All too often we'll look at that, we'll have guilt over what we might have been doing that caused them to pick you for layoff or to be let go. And it's not always the case that there's got to be someone to blame. And even if there is someone to blame, you need to move on. Give yourself absolution and move on, and really look at, how do I get into what I want to do effectively? Chris talked about, what do I need to do to be effective? Like, do I want to change career? Do I want to switch? Do I want to have a parallel? Who am I talking to? When am I talking to them? All these things come into play, and starting your day successfully is planning that out. Actually looking at your weeks and planning that out. Having a strategic plan can make the biggest difference. And that's something that everyone should do, is have a strategic plan about life in general, and really look at planning it out and just being, acting on that plan so that you can be successful. One thing I want to stress is you need to get going as quickly as possible. Chris alluded to it in the way people would talk about jobs and opportunities, but that starts with you telling people. family, friends, former coworkers, getting out there and meeting with people, sending emails to people that, and I'm going to talk about strategic emails that you need to send, to people to really get focused on job search and where you want to take this, because it's really critical that you focus on the things that make you successful, and having people working with you is one of those tools that really is going to make your job search successful. You're out there trying to find out who are your evangelists and get them motivated to help you start or help you look and search for things that are out there that they may hear about and be able to clue you in on and really help you look at that opportunity with a new lens, even in some cases. Really just moving your whole dial forward. Chris talked about getting services. In some layoffs, some people get extra career services. Not everybody does. So when you don't get career services, you really have to focus on getting the things done that you need to have done for your job search in a very timely manner. And, so step by step, moving through the process and really looking at it. So buying into transition can really make that process go that much faster. Getting your team together. In life, we have, in companies, we have boards of directors, and they lead the company in the right direction. One example of a board that every person may have, especially as they get older, is a financial board, which includes a financial advisor, an attorney, a CPA, a tax advisor, a banker. Not everybody needs those things, but if you're successful with life, you want to make sure that it grows and continues to grow and that it may go to the next person. So it's something that you look at as a person. That might be your board of directors. In transition, we need a board too. That board really includes somebody that helps you with interviewing. So mock interviews, testing out things if you've got a scheduled interview, working through issues that you've had at maybe a previous interview, all those things. Somebody that really can help and listen and really focus on how you're interviewing and give you feedback can be a big difference in how long your transition takes. Proofreader. Having someone to proofread your resume, your cover letters, your marketing materials, all the things that we put together in job search, having someone proofreading it so there aren't errors and mistakes in there. I'm sure there are errors and mistakes in my presentation because I didn't have anybody proofread it. But proofreading is about the importance of something, and in job search, everything is important, because if you get the label of not being critical and having good materials, that could sink your job search, especially in a specific company or organization. Having a coach, somebody that's there, really helping you through those ups and downs that you may have, in really getting through and creating what I'm going to talk about later, like star stories, or like answers to difficult questions. People that can help you look at and talk about a particular direction that you might be going. So coach / mentor. A chief networking partner. We're going to talk about the importance of networking. Chris talked about it in sort of vague terms, but networking is really critical to job search, because about 80% of all jobs are obtained through networking. And having a good networking partner to help navigate you and introduce you and help you sift through the type of people that you want to work with and actually network with is critical to your job search. So I highly recommend having someone there called your chief networking partner that can really help you look at that. And then an accountability partner. We're not always motivated to get out of bed every day. A lot of the folks that do testimonials about their career transitions will talk about that. I mean, getting motivated to be getting out of bed, and having someone there that encourages you on a day-to-day basis is critical to your job search. A positive motivator, someone that looks at and helps you say, oh, that's great, you did that. Now, what are we doing with this? How are we doing with that? All the types of things that you're going to encounter in your job search. Having someone there each day to look at that can be very important to you. So I would highly recommend an accountability partner. An advocate, someone who advocates for you. So I talked about it in the previous slide, an evangelist. An evangelist is someone that talks about you, builds you up, finds and tells people about what you do and the things that you are successful at doing, so that your name gets passed around through the networks and personal networks, and people talk about you, and that somebody might know of a job that fits your skill set. And those types of advocates are critical to your job search. So finding them, the people that really can talk your story and really talk you up and have your best interests in mind, is critical to job search. It's critical to getting in the door in a lot of cases, and getting the right networking partners, and getting the right opportunities to talk to people for informational interviews. All those things are critical. References. I'm going to talk about references in just a short period here, but references are the types of people who you're going to use later on when they ask for references. They still ask for references in most jobs, and they want to talk to 3 people who know you in a very positive way, or in whatever way, so that they can get a true picture of what you did in your career so far, and whether you're a stand-up person and really you're telling the truth about who you are and what you're doing. So references are critical. Picking them out and getting them established early on can be very important, because when I talk about it, I'm going to go into why you have a large stable or a large group of references that you can pick upon for strategic purposes. Spirituality. Now, there's the Christian spiritual, there's the nature spiritual, there's the believe in a higher power spiritual, but having something spiritual every day in your life gives you the hope and all the things, the strength that is necessary to do what you do on a day-to-day basis, not even in transition, but on a day-to-day basis. And our organization, Crossroads, is about the Christian spirituality, and Jesus, and the types of power we get from the Christian way of life. But having some spirituality on a day-to-day basis will be helpful as you go about your day-to-day efforts. And then obviously a mentor will be helpful. Somebody that, one person who has been there for you throughout your career may be vastly important to you right now, especially in job search. So I highly recommend, if you have a mentor, that you engage them right away. Don't feel guilty or ashamed or any of that sort of stuff by talking to the person that's been there in your corner the whole time. They're not going to feel. Everybody goes through job search. I've gone through, as Harry alluded to, 3 job searches. The last one was self-inflicted. I really wanted to change my career, and I, like everyone who just did it during the pandemic, the Great Resignation period, wanted to go for something that was more meaningful, something that was more helpful to your career, and your spirituality. So, having a mentor there to coach you and to talk you through things can be very helpful, and I highly recommend it. References. I talked about it, and now I'm going to tell you how I would use those references. Get your list of reference. I think 10 people to start is a good idea. The more the better, but they have to be quality people that have been in your career, that can give you quality, can talk about your performance, about your character, about your personality very effectively. Send them a communication. And I'm going to have to do something here because I have it on a different sheet of paper and I went blank. How is that possible? I want to talk briefly about what you would send a reference. And if you Googled 11 questions to ask a personal reference, I'm going to share a couple of them with you that I would put on that communication out to my references. And there are these questions I think will help you in a lot of ways. So the first question is, can you describe a time when you were where you watched a candidate face a challenging or stressful situation? How did they handle it? And what this will give you the type of information that if asked this question, your reference would give to the person asking it. At the same time, it gives you information about how to evaluate them as a reference. What it also does for you is helps you, if it's good information, it helps you to create star stories. All these things are important to your job search. So I highly recommend that you look at these types of questions and send them to your references so that you get quality information back so you can make qualified decisions about references. What skills does the candidate have that you believe make them stand out as a quality candidate? What are the candidate's strengths and weaknesses? This is one of the, I have yet to hear someone that hasn't gotten the, tell me about your strengths, tell me about your weaknesses. They may be obscured through a different way, but it still is the same question. What are the accomplishments that you've noticed the candidate reach? So here is another one of those for your star stories. It really, the ones that you can't remember, but the other part of that is validated star stories. You know that somebody can validate that star story if asked. So it's one of those things that's really part and parcel with your whole identity, and really something that you should really look at and use. How would you describe the candidate's communication and listening skills? Listening skills have become more critical in business today, and people are actually looking at it more effectively than your overall communication skills. Because we're a much more enlightened group of people out there in business now, and we really want people that are good communicators and listeners at the same time. So, another good question. I really think if you included those 5 questions in your questionnaire and anything else that you want to know, that'd be helpful going forward in picking them as references or using them strategically or helping you create star stories. This is good feedback. It's like a 360 review to build on. That you can Google 360 reviews and get information about what you should ask in the reference there too. But choosing and picking and choosing things that you want to know and that you can use in your day-to-day job search will be helpful. And once you get the feedback that you need from a reference, then you can choose which ones you want to, indicate to them you'd like them to be a reference for you, and really say, I'll reach out to you when I have an opportunity, and get the agreement that they're willing to be a reference for you, and that will be something that they'd be wanting to do willingly and would accept that as a great honor. The other thing is, with this information, you can be more strategic, especially as it relates to how you use a reference, because usually most companies are asking for 3, and you want to try to pick 3 for a specific type of role that be very useful in talking to the potential employer. So a strategic approach to how you use your references may be very helpful. So references, I highly recommend that you start that process really early on, because it's the feedback you need in order to energize your job search and to get the material you need so that when you start interviewing, you are effective at that interview process and you can use the information that they give you to be successful. Star stories. I'm going to go back. Well, actually, I'm going to stay out on this presentation mode for just a quick second. Star stories are actual situation, task, action, result stories. So taking a situation, what tasks did you have to do to make that situation, work? And then what actions or what tasks did you have to take? And then what actions did you take? And then what were the results of that particular story? So, and the key part of it is taking it from situation to result. A lot of times interviews will go and they will talk about the situation and what they had to think about and do, and then what the actions they took with the specific situation. And then they leave it without the result. And the result is critical. And that's what people are looking for in behavioral interviews. So they'll ask behavioral questions about your specific past, and they want you to be specific. I'll give you a couple of questions where this is important. Like, describe a time where you disagreed with a team member. What was the result from that disagreement? So you talk about the situation where that you and that team member, what actions did you take to resolve it? And then what were the results? So what things did you have to do in order to prepare for the actions that you take too, or the tasks at hand? So situation, task, action, result. So thinking about that particular question, when you disagreed with it, what did you think about? What did you have to do? What are the things that then what did you do? Like, for instance, did you set up a time to talk them away from everyone else? Did you, during this discussion, did you make resolution? Were you able to create a situation where it was positive from that end part? So what you do with difficult situations and how you use it to talk about it is how every failure as a learning. And if you use that failure to learn and grow and to change the situation, you will have a favorable result on who you're interviewing with. Because the best predictor of the future is the past for an individual candidate. So that's what they're looking for with behavioral interviews. So the more you can weave these stories together and really think about them before you're asked them, the more you're going to be successful at answering them. So tell me about a time when you failed. Again, a failure, learnings, what were the result? That's what people are looking for. So if you can weave that situation into an action and a result that is favorable and shows what you learned from the situation and how you were able to turn it around, is where you're going to be successful at convincing someone that you have the wherewithal to be a good employee in that organization, a good team member, a good asset. All those things are what you are to an organization. Give me an example where you assumed leadership in a team. People are always looking for, when did you have leadership thrust upon you? And you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. You don't have to be a vice president to be a leader. But when you have a situation that calls for leadership, you have to seize that moment and use your opportunity to actually lead and to bring people forward. And that will show your leadership. So creating stories around that particular question, and that question, keeping that in mind, you can create answers for a multitude of different opportunities when asked a behavioral question. What is the most difficult and challenging situation you ever had to resolve in the workplace? When you think about that, that you can use that particular question and the types of things for a multitude of other questions that you might get, derivatives of that question in an interview. So what I'm trying to say with these 5 questions is, there are going to be more questions that are going to resonate with you. And I say you choose up to 20 questions, or 20, and create 20 star stories that you can manipulate. And I don't use that in a negative way, but create other star stories, when asked questions where you have to actually apply a story that they're looking for from your past behavior or your past performance. And that will help energize and give you an arsenal of things that you can talk about during any interview. And especially if you have panel interviews or interviews where you go from one person to the next person to the next person in an organization, having a multitude of different stories that you can use for the same question can really show the depth of your experience and the depth of your knowledge and the depth of your performance for the future. And when people talk about it, when they get together to talk about you as a candidate, that'll shine through when you have the types of stories that answer these behavioral questions in a very effective manner. So star stories, I think, are one of the big staples of where people really need to focus their attention and really focus their practice too, because saying something, you hear things one way when you say it, and the receiver of that story may hear it a different way. So having someone help you practice those stories, refine those stories, and to really energize those stories can make a big difference in how you perform in an interview and how you're perceived in an interview. So I really encourage you to have coaching help as it relates to those stories when you do get to the practice you're interviewing. So like having someone as part of your board of transition that really helps you look at your interviewing on a day-to-day basis. Coach, you have a big interview coming up and you have, let's say 5 days to prepare. Are you going to spend all that time just doing something else, doing other things, or are you going to focus a great deal of attention practicing and being ready for the most important interview that you may have in your lifetime? I would say practice as much as possible. I can tell you that I've gone into more opportunities winging it and failed than I did, practicing and being ready and taking it. And I'm not proud of that. I don't think anyone should be proud of that. And I think if you take the time to practice and be successful at how you're interviewing, on the nuts and bolts of how you're interviewing, that'll shine through on every interview. So I highly recommend to you out there, get yourself someone to help you with the actual interviewing practice, because it's successful. I'll relay a quick story for you. I was working with someone who had gone through multiple interviews and never really got a job offer. He had been in a company for a number of years, 20 plus, and had been in the same role for that, or very similar role, some changes in it for that whole period. And he was not interviewing successfully. And the reason he wasn't is because he was telling stories that didn't resonate with people. And when we sat down and we worked on the answers that he was giving on it, we tore everything apart. We grabbed onto things that were very important to say and things that he should leave out and things that he should add. And when we went through that whole process of going through and critically looking at the stories he was telling, the answers he was giving, the way he was holding himself, the way he was talking about himself, he was more successful, and he got the next job he was preparing for. He did get an offer for and was successful at it. Now, can I say for sure the practice made the difference? I can't say that for sure, but it sure made it seem like he was a lot more confident and he was a lot more successful going in. And hopefully the result was because he put the work in and because he was ready to be successful. So star stories are the staple. They're the spark plugs of your interviewing process. Having an arsenal that you can pull out and adapt and really use for almost any opportunity, any type of question is really essential. in interviewing. And the more you can talk about yourself in a successful way, in a very quick and confident way, people are going to grab onto and say, "Oh, that's a really good story. That made sense, and this is a good candidate." So that's something to look at and really put a lot of effort into, if you know, and really focus on that especially if you're having trouble. You're getting the first interview, maybe the second interview, but you're not making it to the finalist category. That's where the difference may be, and in how well you tell those stories, and what kind of arsenal you have, especially if you're doing multiple interviews. Some people have talked about in past doing up to 6, 7, 8 interviews. And well, if you're telling the same stories over and over again, in these interviews, you might not be as sharp as you want to be. So having a multitude of different stories can be successful in that way too. One thing to think about. Now, refining your 20, 30, 60-second, story about yourself, tell me about yourself story, your commercial, all those things are really things that'll really get your foot in the door. I mean, really making it. So I want to step back, and we have someone that speaks on a regular basis. His name is David Maggi. And what David says is, you only get one opportunity to make a good first impression. And that's true. I mean, you only get that one opportunity. And if you don't make a successful impression, you might not even get a look at an interview or a conversation or anything. People make up their minds in the first 10 to 90 seconds of any conversation about a particular. They create an impression, and that impression holds through the end result of the talk, interview, or whatever you're engaged in. So making a great first impression is critical. And I would Google Nathan Perez, who is the author of the 20-Minute Networking Guide with Marsha Ballinger, and I'm going to talk about that later too. But making a good first impression is one of the little, he has a little YouTube video on it, and I really recommend that you go out and Google that and really look at that and try to hone your own first impression story, your commercial, your how to make a great first impression. And I think that is something that would make a big difference in anybody's networking also. Because networking, the end result is what you want is to have evangelists and to have people that are out there working for you. And, the best way to do that is to make a great impression on people. So highly recommend you do that too. Adaptable, so that, having a commercial that can be adapted for every situation. One thing that when you're interviewing, generally speaking, you'll probably agree with this. You're hearing tell me a little bit about yourself. That's how people break the ice of an interview. And the better you can tell that story to get them intrigued in what you have to offer, the better you're going to do in that interview. And knowing what they want to hear, and weaving it into your first impression, tell you about yourself, really makes a big difference. So adding those little things and customizing it for every interview can be very, it can be purposeful, first of all, but it can be very helpful and making a great first impression. So making a great first impression is one of the more important things you're going to do with Star Stories, with your first impression, all those things. So work on them, practice them, refine them, make them your own in a way that you can show the confidence and the exuberance and the things that are necessary to make that great first impression. I highly recommend, and I keep saying that, highly recommend. It's a redundant phrase I keep using, but if you're going to be successful in job search, the more effort you put into it, the more you work at it, the better you're going to be at it. Resumes, LinkedIn, job boards. they all have to weave together. They have to be consistent. They have to be meaningful. So let's start with the resume first. A resume isn't a job description. People are looking for, what are your accomplishments? What are your critical makes in a particular job? What were the things that you accomplished while you were there? And then having a tangible, quantifiable number associated with it, or percentage, or some type of tangible result that they can look at and say, yeah, I can measure that. I see that. I know that, that's success. And those are the types of things that your resume should include. 2 to 3 points on each type of, on the results that you're having per job, and making it look so that there's enough space in there that they can read it and see it. A resume should be readable, and you should be able to pick things out in it effectively without having to take a magnifying glass out to look at it. So having a good resume is number one. LinkedIn highlights. Your resume and your LinkedIn profile should be similar in that some of the things that you say in your resume or on LinkedIn should be in your resume. There should be some consistency, but LinkedIn is more of the highlights of things. So at least that's the way I see it, and I subscribe to the methodology where it's highlights. I think that's important, because the more you have on, the more things that you can put on your LinkedIn profile to be found by recruiters, the more likely you're going to be getting a call about, are you interested in this type of position? Would you like to interview for this type of position? So work on the LinkedIn resume, make sure they're linked together, but at the same time, they're a different type of story about your career. Job boards. If you're using job boards, make sure that they match your resume, that they're out there and they're out there for people to find you. My last transition, I did a lot of different job boards just to get a resume out there, to get a CV out there, something that people could find me with. And the reason I did that was because I felt like I wasn't going to post to there. Take my resume and put it on. I just put it out there. So when people were Googling, or they were searching through a particular job board for resumes, they would find me. It was, I think, through one of the job boards, I was able to get the job that I have today. So job boards can be helpful in that regard. They can be out there as somewhere else that people are looking. All of these things need to be truthful and according to the eyes that are viewing it. So politicians think they're truthful, but they're not always to the eyes that are viewing them. That's the lens that we should be looking at, is who's viewing it, and do they believe that it's truthful? And that's the criticality that we need to have in creating our story through our resume, our LinkedIn, and whatever else we have out there. Refine as needed and be consistent. So you'll find that a resume isn't working in some cases, and you'll need to refine it. You'll need to refine it for specific opportunities. You'll need to refine it for any number of things. You need to refine it so that it gets through a job classification software pack, so that you can get to the top to see a recruiter for a position. So making sure that, again, proofreading, that everything is consistent, that it's truthful, all those types of things are necessary when you're creating all the different types of communication tools out there. So put some effort into that and make sure that that's what you're doing on a consistent basis. So resume, LinkedIn, job boards, all things that you should look at. I see that there's a lot of chat out there. Is there something I need to address?
I think you've addressed some of these as you went on,
Okay.
Tom.
Okay,
But
good.
one of them way back from references that he asked, I don't know if you addressed this, but how often do they actually call references? I can tell you as a recruiter that it varies by companies. Some companies don't check references or not much. Others go after them pretty aggressively. And so it's, and you don't know when you're interviewing which category that company falls in. So be prepared, and references do matter.
Right.
Just, somebody making the point as you did that preparing your star stories is important, because I think most of us have a tendency to wing them, and that's not a great plan.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, no, those are the references, though. You're right, Harry. They are the types of things that are company to company, but choosing the right people and having them ready when you do get it, or when you do have the opportunity, or when they ask you for them, and they're going to verify them, and they're going to talk to these people, and they're going to be critical. If they start parsing things out in a way to get to the what they view as the truth, if they heard something, let's say, in your interview, and they want to find out more about it, they are going to ask references. And I don't mean that you made an obvious statement in a lot of cases. Sometimes it's there's a kernel that they're looking for in a particular question or questioning with references. So it is important that you have advocates on your resume team, on your reference team, and that they're truthful and honest. I'll give you an example from my one that I had to look at myself in the reference area. I chose only my bosses, anybody that was who I reported to in my career for my resumes or for my references. And I had one particular manager or vice president that was more of a storyteller and a little bit, he wasn't always so refined, let's put it that way. And it was something that I had to look at. And then maybe when I talk about being strategic and who you use, that's what I mean in that regard. Sometimes you can use someone who's great storyteller, and you get these organizations that are very critical about what they're listening to and how they're listening to it and what they want to hear. Then you really have to choose the right reference for those folks. So again, more strategic, having a bevy or having a multitude of different references, having people that really can talk about specific skills that you have, so that you can bring them up when it's situational. All those things are important when you're choosing your references. And I'm sorry I didn't see that question earlier, because I would have chose to answer it sooner, obviously.
Another question related to references is,
Okay.
Why do they ask for them in that application before you even get to a job offer? And is it required?
Generally speaking, you don't see that. There are and those are unique organizations, I would think, because that's a lot of information to have about somebody and to be able to reference and find. So they must have some way of categorizing and keeping it successful, so they can use it, or they're using it as a way of weeding out candidates possibly up front that don't put references in.
I think actually,
thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, in most cases, they're just gathering all the information up front, but you do not, typically they're not required fields in the application. And so you can just leave it blank or put in a note that just says, we'll provide at appropriate time or something along those lines. But I generally recommend not giving the reference information at that point. You don't want them called until there's an offer at stake. And so it's not necessary.
And that's generally the practice at hand. I mean, it's very rare that I've ever, well, I don't remember having to give references before I've actually, they want to do a background check on me before the end before providing an offer or making a contingency offer, a contingent offer based on reference checks.
I do know that some online application systems do ask for references, but you don't have to provide them there. Had a couple of questions around what job boards you recommend.
Well, LinkedIn, obviously, and then ZipRecruiter, it was one that I found very useful. I don't recommend Career Builder or the other one, Monster. But the Minnesota job board used to be an effective one. Now, this last time I didn't use it. Harry, is it still out there, the Minnesota jobs?
I assume it is, but frankly, I don't know. I haven't looked.
Okay.
Actually a good resource is Indeed.com, because while companies can post directly on Indeed, the reality is Indeed also does, it scrapes from a number of other job boards and gives you consolidated results.
Right.
So it'll scrape from Career Builder and Monster.com and a number of others. It cannot scrape from LinkedIn though. And so you have to go to LinkedIn separately. Somebody just posted minnesotaworks.net. And yeah, I do believe, thanks, Paul. I believe that is active still. Yeah,
I did use it in previous job, but the last one I didn't. And I don't think there wasn't any, at the time I was using it, I thought it was useful. I can't recommend it now, only because I don't know enough about it. But like Harry said, Indeed is very useful because there are other tools on there too that you can do as a candidate to boost your visibility or to boost your scores so that people look at you more effectively. So that said, now what I'm going to move on to. Why is this not moving? That's not good. Let's go this way. There we go. Targets. So refining your strategy and targets. So Chris talked about it in targeting, different companies and different opportunities depending upon where your career search is going and how it's going. So if you're looking to change careers, then your target's going to be different than the targets if you're going to stay aligned with what you've been doing in the past. So looking at your targets, you work with the people that are your advocates, the people that you network with, the people that you are talking to on a day-to-day basis to look at specific companies that you can target for your networking activity, your informational interviews, for the types of things that you do to really glean information about whether or not they're a good cultural fit for you, whether or not they're a good opportunity for you, all those things. So having your target organizations and the places that you want to be, and when you're talking to people about where you'd like to go and if they know anybody there, that's when that really comes into play. So having those targets and changing them on a consistent basis as you know what you need to know about a specific place. And if you cross them off the list, you cross them off the list and you put somebody else on it. But you're looking to refine that list on a consistent basis so you have more and more places to be looking at for opportunities. Networking. I talked about it earlier, and I can't recommend it more highly. Buy and read the 20-minute networking guide. It can help you in preparing for networking meetings. It can help you in talking through them. It can really help you in many ways around the idea of networking and being successful at it. What networking is there for you is to create strategic paths to opportunities. So the more it's like jumping around a chessboard. I mean, if you can get to from one end of it to the other with one With one jump, that'd be great. But in a lot of cases, it takes multiple jumps to get there. And really, that's what networking is, trying to weave your way to the right people that can be your advocates, that know about opportunities, that can help you refine your job search, can help you refine the way you talk about yourself, can help you in all the ways that are necessary to help your job search be successful. So I highly recommend that you network consistently on a day-to-day basis. I often hear people talk, you should have at least 10 networking meetings a week. There are people that will meet up to 10 people a day. The Murphy rule, as many people as you can fit in a day. All those types of things are good, but the quality meetings that net you results are what you're looking to do. So if you can get 10 in a week, that'd be great. Go to Networking with Grace. Harry's going to talk about what Crossroads can offer if I give him any time to talk about that. Go do Networking with Grace. There are people there that can help you, give you people to talk to, help you with your networking strategies, and really, help you learn about how networking can be successful. That's one organization that I can recommend. There are others, but I like the Grace team, and Harry will tell you more about them later. Rewarding yourself. When you are successful, let's say you practice, and you have success, reward yourself. The bigger the success, the bigger the reward. Small rewards for doing little things, big rewards for doing big things, major accomplishments, but reward yourself. This is tiring work, and it can be draining, and you really want to focus on the types of things that will make you successful. So if you're rewarding yourself, it's kind of like helping yourself through that process. Please do it, because it's good for your soul, it's good for you, and it makes you more successful. Get your rest. Sleepless nights are they're plentiful in times of stress. And if you're stressed out over job transition, rest is critical. So get your rest. Do things, go for a walk. Get yourself prepared for rest. Turn off the screens early. Get yourself in the right, meditate. Do a gratitude journal. Do the types of things that will turn your mind positive for when it's time to rest, and you will get the rest that you need. Be spiritual, address yourself and your needs through spirituality. Prayer in my job searches, I think prayer and talking with God were some of the most important things that I did. I can't stress it enough. Spirituality is one of the things that we need more of. I think Chris alluded to that we can be more Jesus-like and love our neighbor. The better off our society would be. More love in our society, and less criticality, I think, is essential. So reward yourself. Recapping, tuning up your job search or jump search, tuning up for jump starting your job search. Focus on moving on quickly from the transition, crux of your transition. Whatever made you in transition, get over it quickly, move on, have a happy attitude, have a positive attitude, go to positive things, really focus on positivity. Get the word out as soon as possible. Get your friends, family, your advocates, your mentors, all those people engaged in your job search, moving you forward. That's important. Do that first step. Refine your message. Make sure you get help from your references. Making sure that your star stories are spot on. Making sure you have enough of them. Really focus and practice them so that you can be. Set your targets and get networking. Networking, I said, I've heard, is validated. People know it. It's 80% or more of all jobs are obtained through networking. So network as much as possible. Reward yourself. Be happy about the things you've accomplished. Make sure that you're rewarded for your hard work. And don't don't beat yourself up if you don't get 10 networking opportunities. You don't get 3 interviews in a week. You don't get 1 interview in a month. It doesn't matter. It's all part of the process. You will be successful if you keep a positive attitude and you work at the craft of interviewing and finding jobs. And then get coaching when necessary. Harry's going to tell you a little bit about the resources we have available at Crossroads, and then reach out to people through networking that can help you in a way and coach you along the way. It's all in part of the process, but to be successful, you really have to work at it. And it's a 40-hour-a-week job, just like anything, if not more in some cases. So work at it, practice, be successful, be happy, be positive, reward yourself. It's hard, job search is hard, but it's rewarding when you do find the right job and you're in an organization where you're happy and you're doing the types of things that are necessary to propel yourself through life. So enjoy job search, do it successfully. If you need help, search it out and get it. I really enjoyed talking to you about jumpstarting your job search tonight. I hope you enjoyed it too. If there's any questions I need to address, Harry?
Yeah, we'll back up a little bit. Is
Okay.
our cover letters used? And she says, I've heard mixed messages about this.
Sure. There are mixed messages out there. And I think there are times when a cover letter tells the story that you can't tell with a resume. And if you're one of the finalists, sometimes it could be the difference between you and that other candidate. That's when it's important. But in applying for jobs and the way a lot of jobs are applied, they're not even used. Harry, any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what you were getting at earlier, thank you notes make a huge difference and follow up after interviews. And those are important. Cover letters just don't get read. The exceptions are often for nonprofits and for academia. In those cases, they just nature of those businesses or the culture in those businesses, they tend to like cover letters more. But for 99% of corporate positions, they just don't get read.
Right.
And so save the time and effort.
Right. I could agree with you.
If I can add to that, Harry.
Yeah, Chris.
There were some companies that cover letter was a requirement in the online application process. And I'm sure a lot of them use the same software now, right? So there were some that required a cover letter. So
yeah, they ask if
you just couldn't get through the submit button without it, right? So I recommend drafting one. I mean, there's great templates in MS Word. It's really easy. And it's good practice to write down what you might say about why you're enthusiastic about the role, right? And it's a good way to practice it. And then you've got one you can reuse when the next person asks for one.
Yeah,
sure.
Thanks.
And you can make it a 3-sentence letter too. If they're requiring it, it's probably not going to get used. But that's just my opinion.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Tom. Great information. It's rare that, we have a lot of topics for these webinars and they're always, down one stovepipe. It's always great when we have something that encompasses so many different aspects of the job search in one fell swoop like you did tonight. And I think to give that bigger picture is really valuable. Thanks so much. You've done this a long time. You bring a lot to the table and clearly it was all great information tonight.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Harry. I appreciate getting an opportunity to talk to the people out there. So thank you.
I want to take just a few short minutes here to let you know of everything else we have available through Crossroads. Let me get this up on the screen here and run through, because I really encourage you to take advantage of the other resources and help we have, because the more coaching, the more resources you use, the easier this process gets, and you get a lot more effective all the way along the way, hopefully to land more quickly. If this is your first time joining us on a webinar, when you registered online, you had to fill in your mailing address, and that was so that we can send you this free gift. You'll be receiving this book in the mail in the next several days here. How Long, Oh Lord, How Long? It's a terrific devotional on helping you kind of meet the challenges of the emotional roller coaster through this process. And in the back, there's an index that has a number of different topics you can go look up, and it's just a wonderful resource. So that's our gift to you. We're glad to be able to send that out for free for you, no obligation in any way at all. And you can expect that coming if you haven't received one yet, or if this is the first time you've joined us. In order to sign up for this, you had to be on our website. And if you haven't explored further on our website, I really encourage you to do so. There are a ton of resources. There's more ways you can get engaged in Crossroads. And there's a job board as well. We have a number of companies that know what we do and know that great people engage with Crossroads. And so they fill in or post jobs on our job board. And in many cases, they include a contact name and contact information, so you can reach out and talk to somebody instead of just apply to a black hole and hope that somebody sees it. And so you can follow up with people as well. So I really encourage you to go onto the website, explore all that's there, and take advantage of as many of the resources as you can that you think will be helpful for you. On a weekly basis, we have multiple ways you can get help. As Tom alluded to in his presentation, we have Networking with Grace, which is our weekly networking group. It's online. We do it through Zoom meetings. You do have to pre-register on the website in order to participate, but it's every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. And it's about sharing contacts, leads, ideas, and it's led by Wes Roper and Wes Tang, or we call them Wes 1 and Wes 2, but they do a wonderful job of helping everybody walk out with something each week. And so really encourage you to do it. It's encouraging to be there and talk with the group and get some input from others, as well as ideas and contacts and networks. You can also sign up anytime and as often as you'd like for one-on-one coaching. If you'd like to sit down with one of our volunteers, either through a Zoom meeting or a phone call, and just talk through your situation, or have them review your resume for you and give you feedback, or do some mock interview practice, or anything else regarding your job search at all that you have questions about or would just like to discuss with somebody, take advantage of that. As I mentioned, you could sign up online. One of our volunteers will follow up with you and schedule a time for the two of you to talk. As I mentioned multiple times, this is an emotional roller coaster, and you need to find ways to deal with that. It's just a reality for everyone that goes through a job search. But we really recommend turning to Christ in this process. And so we have a team also that loves to pray for you. And you can put in a prayer request on our website, and you can count on somebody on our team that will be praying for you specifically. If you feel like you need to talk through some of those emotional issues and personal issues through this process, we have a soul care group as well that will meet with you online or through a phone call, and can do that on a regular basis with them. That you can schedule. They'll reach out to you to talk through what your needs are, what you'd like to discuss, and then schedule multiple sessions that you can have together. All the details are on the website. Look it up. You can sign up there and take advantage of that as well. It's just a great way to get additional morals and spiritual support through this process. The meat and potatoes and the most in-depth help you can get is through our online classes. And I really encourage you to take advantage of this, because it's the best way to kind of cover all the things Tom talked about in more depth, plus more topics as well, starting with attitude and getting in the right frame of mind so that you come across as strong as possible to the people you're networking with and in your interviews. We do some assessments so they can better articulate what makes you unique and what you bring to the table. We talk about networking and targeting companies, go through resumes and interviewing tactics and negotiating and selecting, and there's really much more. And as important and as solid as all those topics are, which we cover in depth, I think equally important is the weekly check-in and light accountability with the rest of the people in your group. You're all it's in a small group of anywhere from 4 to 12 people, and you get encouragement from them, moral support. You're in the same boat together, working together. It's, I think, that piece of it is as important and necessary as all the content we cover. And throughout the 8 weeks, we explore what God's perspective is of your job search in your life, and why does he care, and what does it matter. We have new classes beginning monthly. Actually, we have I'll be starting a new class this coming Tuesday it'll be in the afternoons. Details are online. My email address is in there. You can shoot an email to me to let me know you'll be joining us, and I'll be sending more details out here probably tomorrow. But check it out online, take advantage of it. Really encourage you to join one of the classes. That's really where you can get the most help on an ongoing basis, and it makes the biggest difference in your job search. To hopefully help you land faster. That's the idea, right? And, obviously the goal is to land faster, but also just to give you confidence. Am I doing the right things in my job search? Am I pursuing the things that'll make the biggest difference? Or am I wasting a lot of time on things that really aren't getting me anywhere? And getting that confidence and knowing that you're doing what's necessary. So take advantage of it, check it out. I really encourage you to plug in. If you haven't seen it yet, we have a LinkedIn group. If you type in the search box in LinkedIn, MN Crossroads Career Network, you'll find us. Join the group. We've got well over 2,000 people that have been through Crossroads that are members of the group, and they share information, they share leads. You can search through the other members of the group. If there's somebody that is working at a company that you're pursuing, you might be able to reach out to them to get some additional help networking into that organization. And as you land a new job, I encourage you to stay in the group and be available for other people to reach out to you, to give back and be able to help people land as well going forward. So check it out. It's a great resource, and there's a lot of information in there. Also, we'll post this webinar, and all of our previous webinars are on our YouTube channel. And so again, MN Crossroads Career Network, punch that into the search box in YouTube, you'll find us, and you can view any of our previous webinars. They're all on there, and it's a great way to review this webinar or others that you may have missed and topics that you may be interested in. So check that out. As an additional resource, 𝙆𝙞𝙘𝙠𝙨 has been just a great partner for us. They've provided us resources and money to do the things we do. They've done a lot of things to come alongside and help us. And they also are doing a 3 webinars series each month called Financial Considerations During Job Transition, to help you figure out how to budget more effectively, how to, during your transition, what to do with the resources you do have. And these are not sales presentations in any way. They're simply to help you out, figure out the financial aspects of your job transition. And so check out the website for schedules and details, and you can sign up for those there too. I just want to acknowledge we have over 40 people that volunteer for Crossroads in one way or another, and nobody's getting a paycheck in any way. Nobody's making money on us. It's all that they bring expertise and a heart to help people. And I'm just grateful for every one of them. We couldn't do all the things we do if it wasn't for all of them. And I just want to point out that this isn't because of 1 or 2 people that get involved. There's a lot of people working behind the scenes and helping everything happen that we offer. If you don't have a church home, there are 3 churches locally here that are aligned with Crossroads, that when we do meet in person, we have meetings at the different locations, and we hope to get back to that here before too long. But Woodbury Lutheran Church, North Heights Church in Arden Hills, and Grace Church in Eden Prairie. Check them out. You can watch streaming online, you can attend in person, and if you don't have a church home, I encourage you to really plug in, because that's where you can get the relationships and the moral and spiritual support and some great teaching and all kinds of things. It's, I think, really important in this process that you don't try to go it alone. Finally, I just want to mention that our next webinar is going to be next Thursday morning, the 17th, and we will have Scott Welly, who will be presenting on Outperform the Norm in Your Job Search. If you're not familiar with Scott, he is a national speaker and author. He has a book called Outperform the Norm that is actually a bestseller, and he talks about how you can perform at a higher level in your life, but through your job search too, and how to be effective at that. It's very practical and inspirational as well, and really encourage you to take advantage of that. I've been saying, I encourage you to do this. I do all of it, because it's tough to go this alone. Most of you, and myself included, when you're in these situations, you tend to isolate, and that's one of the worst things you can do. So get plugged in, take advantage of the resources available for you, and hope to see you on one of our other webinars again. Best wishes. Have a great week. Take care.